that. Final question, Dr. Silas. The issue of medical education, this doesn't come up at all, and there has been a lot of conversation on this in terms of curriculum. Is it important for us to be lecturers, you know, in universities or in the hospital, and how can we get there?
Yeah, again, thanks for inviting me to this forum. I've enjoyed every single thing that everyone has said, and I've learned quite a lot as well. At different times during the conversation here, we talked about getting involved with leadership or management, and I think one or two people have also touched on education. I think that's probably one of the easiest pathway. Not that easy is supposed to mean lazy or uninvolved, but the medical education pathway, I think for BAME doctors, is probably one that presents the least obstacles. As someone has already alluded to, generally, we are the survivors. So we are multi-talented in so many ways. You can have various phases, even as if you're a consultant or if you're a GP, you would normally, as a BME doctor, you would normally possess so many other skills that you can apply in whatever aspect of clinical practice or management practice you choose to go into. Education being one of those. Now, education, you don't have to be a lecturer in the academic sense. There are more secondary care hospitals in the country that give you ample opportunities to be clinical supervisors, educational supervisor, which is where everything starts. I think if you can excel to start with as an educational supervisor and build up your portfolio as a recognized educational supervisor who deals with difficult trainees or trainees that are facing challenges in their training, if you build up a reputation as an educational supervisor, that's a starting point, but that's not all you need, because you have to be careful then that you don't end up with the trainees that will then put you in twists and turns that you could end up being in trouble with. But usually dealing with difficult trainees as an educational supervisor is a good starting point. That will leave you open to opportunities such as college tutors or academic tutors, which again is a starting point. There are other pathways, like being director of medical educations, which is a position that I hold, or honorary senior lecturers or full senior lecturers in academic units. There are also many opportunities that you can get working in deaneries, in various advisory roles in deaneries. But I think, like I said, we are particularly skilled in those areas of teaching, mentorship, and coaching, probably because of the nature that we have. Yeah. We're generally, I would say, confident people, but we also know when it's important to be humble. And I think that combination of confidence and humility are the two key skills that you need as an educator. You've got to have patience in bucketfuls, and you've got to be able to exercise self-control. So education is clearly a role that I think if you're scared of going into management, because the issue with management in many of these hospitals is that there are too many co-founders there that would determine your success. Less so in the academic, or rather in the teaching and training pathway. The more you put, the more results you have. And you are not likely to face great challenges if you can demonstrate the skills that you need for teaching. There are other opportunities. You can be mentors to PLAB training, to PLAB, intending PLAB trainees. And I remember that I particularly benefited from that because a couple of years before coming to this country in the early 90s, I randomly wrote to a number of hospitals. I went to the British Council, identified Nigerian names practicing in the UK, and I wrote to just randomly and said, look, I just need some advice. And I can't tell you the responses that I got. They were just wonderful responses. They were very helpful responses. And if it wasn't for this group of Nigerians, and I'm sure it applies to many others, who provided that level of mentorship for me, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But just to encourage aspiring trainees and also young consultants. The education pathway is one pathway that you shouldn't ignore. As a trainee, you can be an associate college tutor. For instance, the Royal Colleges of Physicians have the ACP roles where you are an associate college tutor. That's a very positive role to take, and it's good for your CV as well. As a trainee, you can be a chief registrar. There are some units that have chief registrar positions. You can apply for that and demonstrate your leadership there, because then you can take, of course, that's the leadership fellow that's been, I think Chiza has talked about that as well. So there are great pathways, and of course there are so many programs that you can go to, from diploma levels to master's level in education or related pathway. They are fairly straightforward. It doesn't take you too long to complete those programs while still working. They're not as the commitment that you need for them, you can do as a part-time commitment, and that would also help you. So I won't go much further. If you have specific questions for me, I'll address that so I don't take up too much time.